I'm going to call to order the November 3rd Housing Committee meeting at 1:01 p.m. There is a recommendation that the Housing Committee meeting agenda for November the 3rd, 2022 be approved as circulated. Do I have a mover? Malcolm, a seconder? Ryan? All in favor? Carried. Also recommendation that the minutes of the Housing Committee meeting held on September the 8th, 2022 be adopted. Do I have a mover on that? Siobhan? Seconder? Ryan? All in favor? Carried. All right, new business. The housing strategy update. Is that going to be Scott, Sarah? Okay.
Okay, so here's our flow chart showing us where we're at. So we're currently in the revision stage. We're doing data compilation and interpretation. So we're still waiting for a few more data releases that should be happening by the end of November. And then we'll have all the census data that we need to update the data that was used in the housing needs assessment as part of our housing strategy. And you know, we're working on some revision of, you know, organization of the document in that. So we'll have something for the committee to review. Once that's done, any recommendations for revision, and then from there, it can be recommended to council. Which is what the next steps were.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Thanks. On your last thing there, where the arrow was, you mentioned a few things, revisions, final compilation of data, presentation to council. What were the timelines and all? Is it all that at one meeting or three more meetings, or?
We have at least 2 more meetings. So like I would wait to meet again until the new year, just so that there's time to get all that data together. So the rest of the data isn't released till the end of this month. So then there needs to be time to get it all put into the document, review it, figure out what that says, review it against what our housing needs assessment said, and see if the new data sheds any light on what our current needs assessment says. Maybe there's been some shifts, maybe there's some new observations to be taken from that. So once we have that information, we can complete our draft housing strategy and bring it back to the committee to review that. And then potentially we might make some more changes based on what we see. As a staff person, I can provide some suggestions, like, do we need to change it or not? Right?
Okay.
So then if you're happy with it as it stands at that meeting, then you can make the recommendation to council, or we can make changes and then the next meeting, make a recommendation to council.
Okay, so you're suggesting then the next meeting in January.
Yeah, and maybe bouncing it back, because it's usually the first Thursday of a month.
So that might be too quick after Christmas, right?
Yeah, that'd be pretty quick. Yeah. It's like, well, there's going to be, you know, the district will be closed for a week.
Okay.
For sure. So.
Could we have maybe a meeting? I don't know, because I like some of the stuff that we're going to recommend, and so council could accept implementation as number 6 or whatever sort of thing. So we need to give the new council a chance to sanction this committee sort of thing, or change it how the new council sees fit, or I guess the mayor, or
The new mayor, yeah.
however that shakes out.
Yeah, so the new mayor is asking for change to the terms of reference. So that's coming to the next council meeting to update that terms of reference. So we would be bringing that to the housing committee as well, so that you can see it. The only change was to reduce the number of people. So that's the same as the planning and development committee.
So 2 and 2 sort of?
Exactly.
2 for the public and 2 councillors?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, just thank you.
Okay. All right. So that will happen next after it goes to council then.
But so my suggestion is
Yes.
like, I think council's meeting on the 29th,
The 30th of November.
30th.
Yeah.
So could we not have a meeting in December?
If you want to, we would probably just be talking about the terms of reference. There won't be, like, I won't have had.
Oh, right, the data won't be,
Right.
compilation of data won't be complete. Okay, that answers that question.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to do the compilation of data and bring you info. I'd want to finish the housing, like get that draft tightened up so that you've got something proper to comment on. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're thinking second week in January then? I mean, to me, it doesn't matter. I don't ever go anywhere. So if it's our first week, it would be the third is a Tuesday, I believe. So the fifth would be the Thursday. Is that correct? So the following week. Sorry, and I'm just going off the school calendar because that's how my life runs.
First Thursday is the fifth. Second is the 12th.
So the fifth or the 12th.
I mean, I would suggest the 12th, just to give everybody time to come back from holidays and
You're back, staff is back in the office on the second or third?
on the second.
Okay, so yeah, that gives you a week and a half. Okay,
Scott, do you think we need a vote on the meeting date? Because it's different from the tour or no?
So.
Okay.
Kind of left up to the chair.
I think we just book it for January the 12th.
And we could always vote too. Yay.
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 We're already in favor. Okay, continue on then maybe with your next steps and then we can discuss.
It's very hard for me to see. So far away. Okay, so here are some of the things like as things are formulating in my mind and, you know, we've been tightening up the strategy a bit as we've been waiting for this data. We've got some tighter recommendations kind of out of all of our meetings, what we've been talking about that. So this is kind of likely what'll be in that strategy for our short-term actions. There's a new section in there now as well that takes each action or strategy and aligns it with a particular housing type and goal in terms of our housing gaps and who those people are. So there's a new section like seniors housing, which strategies and actions will feed into that. Increasing our diversity of housing types and increasing density in our existing neighborhoods. There's a whole, so we've got tables for that. And then of course, at the beginning of the strategy, we've got that one table with immediate short-term actions that, you know, council can direct staff or whatever to move forward with almost right away. So these are most of them, I think. So endorse strategy 6, which will be our implementation plan. Work to establish a platform to connect tenants and landlords. That's been a really big one that we've heard from feedback. So I have still been meeting with other folks since our workshop. I phoned and connected with some folks that wanted to come but weren't able to make it. So that was a big one. Implement regulations short-term rental industry, like just support that movement that's already kind of happening. Update our revitalization tax incentive bylaw, and of course there'll be some recommendations for specific things to do with that. Determine if there's support for 1% MRDT increase to fund an affordable housing project. So we need to connect with all those businesses and find out if there's support for it and move from there.
But-
Implement it.
Wait, oh,
Go ahead, Mel.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so on the 1% MRDT, before we approach the businesses or we recommend to council and then council approaches the business, wouldn't we want to target what the project would be? Watch out the spider.
That's okay. He's okay.
For sure, but we do have
we could sell
a couple irons in the fire.
that too,
Where council can choose, which project, is it this habitat project, is it?
right? So this is high level, but
This is high
for
level,
the implementation of that, before we try and get support from the hotels and even houseboats or Airbnbs, however.
Yeah.
Or whoever pays into that, we would be explaining to them what exactly it would be used for.
well, does the committee want to have a recommendation of a specific project? Because we do have, so there's two kind of irons in the fire. And then another big component of the strategy will be this accessory dwelling unit intensification, right? So this whole idea with having plans and grant to help existing single family homeowners add density to their lots. That could be a project. Potentially, I'm not sure. I'd have to talk to Kelly again to see how that works.
Well, could the, like, I don't have a one in mind, but I'm just thinking out loud. Like our library, we have, could the project be having four construction drawings at the front desk available for pickup to be approved? Is that a project?
Well, and that's what I'm talking about, right? Is that, but I'm not 100% sure that that was something that we could do. I remember talking to Kelly about it,
Mhm.
and it didn't seem like for that specific thing it would work. So I'd have to find out. I think it has to be like an actual, like, here's the building plans, here's the land.
How about our
Right.
partnership with Eagle Valley Senior Citizens Housing Society? We've already donated the land, or we're gonna lease the land, or however that would, as much as we could on that side. But we know that there's gonna be additional costs that the Housing Society doesn't have a budget for, as far as bringing infrastructure to the property lines.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, proper access and infrastructure to the property lines for construction to start, sort of thing. So there's going to be some costs there for sure that eventually the Housing Society is going to come to the district and say, we don't have that money. Maybe that could be something that it's already exists, it's already funded, that's a tangible thing that we know there's going to be additional costs. Maybe that could be the project.
Find out and see.
Yeah, I think like more of an overall, like, 'cause it shouldn't be any if it implies to a developer or development, I think that's not, I think the taxpayer and the MRGT contributors would,
I mean,
say, look more favorable on doing something that's kind of for the,
Well, this is a non.
yes, no, that's what I'm saying, that would work, but
it does have to be for a specific project, for sure.
Okay.
But I think what Malcolm is saying,
Yeah.
would it be best to know which project first before we go and ask?
Yes.
Right, so
Yeah.
better buy in if they know exactly which project it's for.
yeah,
And it's a matter of just finding out, looking more closely about how that works.
okay,
Like, can it go to a nonprofit organization?
yeah.
Okay,
That's a good question. I mean, that was a good suggestion, Malcolm.
Yeah, because we're already partnering with them, right?
It's already something that's on the books and going.
And
right?
funded,
Yeah,
and funded, yeah.
Yeah.
And because
And for sure there'll be shortfall.
I know there's going to be an ask there sooner or later from
Yeah.
the society. So it either comes from BC Housing or the community, but the society does come from money.
Right. Okay, all right.
okay. So minor OCP and zoning amendments to support an additional secondary dwelling in the R1. So it's like really low hanging fruit. And would probably be a little simpler to amend. So it'd be a matter of going to the OCP, going to our current low density land use designation, which we have other recommendations to just completely scrap that designation and just expand our medium density. But go to that and update what it says about density, so that you can have a total of 3 units in that land use designation. So that would be pretty minor, it would be a text amendment. And then do a text amendment to the R1 zone in our new bylaw, which may be getting adopted around the same time that we take this strategy to council. So we would have to come back and do that, but that would be like a really minor change. And we know from our survey that there's strong support from the community to do that. Like, we already know that their support. So the other is this innovation grant application. So from the workshop, CMHC came and let us know that this innovation grant is coming. It isn't fully rolled out yet, but they're like, we really like some of your strategies. We think they would be good candidates for this grant. For example, the library of plans. And also like a grant type project potentially, like where there's funds. So if you do, we could set it up so it's like you use one of our plans, you go through our expedited billing and approval process, and there might be some other things too, like maybe you have to have a housing agreement, potentially, like agreement on title that unit has to be eligible for 5 years.
They don't make a profit and flip.
And then they'd qualify to apply for this grant where they'd get like, I don't know, maybe $5,000 or something like that. And I'm not sure. And it could be kind of like Vernon's where basically the grant paid their DCCs.
Right.
So the district still gets DCCs to fund any upgrades to sewer and water. I did talk to Jeremy and the tree streets look fine for this kind of increased density.
Okay.
A different story if we're talking about maybe a larger townhouse project or something like that, depending on where it is in the neighborhood. But I did talk to Jeremy and it sounds very feasible with what's there for infrastructure. This other recommendation would be to include a rent to own component for the Main Street project. And I mean, it sounds like what Bill was saying is that the scope of that could include a variety of tenure types. But based on our survey feedback, there's a very strong interest in a rent to own program. So we could look at that. And we did talk with the manager from the local SASCU here. So there's willingness to look into it and come up with an idea to take to their board. So it may be a way to make that work. And then this other one here, the district owned lands suitable for residential development be considered for donation to a community land trust for an AIP, AHOP type program combination, along with pre-zoning for infill development. So that's coming out of our exercise we did early on where we looked at district owned lands, where they are. There are a couple lots in our older neighborhood. There's one on Capel and one on Oak. So we could look at rezoning them for infill. So maybe there could be a couple townhouses that have secondary suites and carriage houses or something like that. Or maybe it's like a triplex that looks more like a normal home, say, for example, on Oak.
Yes.
Would do more of a triplex that looks like a normal home and maybe has a carriage house in the back.
Yeah.
So there's some ideas there. And then it's also worth broaching. There's some road dedication around town that's pretty big, right, in those areas that we would need to explore more. But potentially we could do something there as well. Because it's currently road dedication. So it's this whole legal thing. And anyway.
Okay.
And I don't see anything in co-ops.
Well, a co-op. So the thing with the community land trust is there is an existing one in BC that will take that on. We don't need to find people to come together and create that. And that's the thing with the co-op. Unless you already know of a co-op that's what's the word I'm looking for? Bridging communities that we could approach for partnering. We would need somebody to come together to do that. Somebody to put their hand up and be like, you know what, I'm interested in that. I will take that on. I'll champion this.
So someone as in who, someone within the community, or because when I've talked to, I mean, you know, I'm a huge co-op advocate. And when I've talked to people in the community, including like people that want to retire here that have been very vested, it's something that they're very interested in.
Sure.
So who should be taking it on?
Anyone.
So
Anyone.
so the town can't take it on, we need.
It has to be a nonprofit.
It has to be a nonprofit. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'll talk to the person who's actually into it.
So you might want to talk to, I think a good group to talk to would be the Land Trust in Vernon, because I think they also have a co-op. And how they set theirs up, it was actually a coalition of various organizations.
Can you text me that or email me it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it'd be worth talking to them to find out what their genesis was.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of any consultation I've done so far, no one potential partner has put up their hand and said, let's go for it, right? Like
I was thinking the Haven might be a good opportunity to convert the Haven to a co-op because it would reduce the administration from the senior housing society, because they wouldn't have to administrate 28 landlords, or I mean,
20 tenants.
tenants. And they wouldn't have to do improvements because it would be responsibility of co-op, so, and they would take pride in ownership. You'd have to do a legal survey and the society would have to give that land to a new co-op. And then they would run themselves. They would look after their own budget, do their own improvements, and
Well, and you're not allowed to profit off them too, right? So when the
Right.
person passes or can no longer stay in there, they have to sell, I think they get 10% or something, but they have to sell, it can't be market value.
it's sort of.
So they can,
Turn it over.
they turn it over, but it's not like the family dad dies and now what was dad bought in at 125 is now worth 600,000. And again, we're just eliminating an entire group of people from ever having safe housing. Because I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do is so people are not feeling like at any minute the rug's being pulled out from under them.
It's kind of like a housing agreement.
Yeah, Kamloops has a really good one.
I'll send you the link to the cooperatives first website. So
Yeah.
that was the group, the webinar that I was telling you guys about at our last meeting. And the link is in the minutes. It wasn't working for some reason. Google cooperatives first.
Okay.
And their whole thing is they offer training to people, groups that are interested in establishing and running their own co-op. They have a ton of resources. And another good resource is the BC NPHA, which
Right.
I'm familiar with.
Okay.
So those two are really good ones to connect with to get info.
BC Not-for-Profit Housing Association has huge amount of resources. Not money, but
Huge templates.
Something we're not
templates
dealing
and
with.
documents that,
It's
and
not really-
processes and
But it
procedures.
is something we're hoping to like raise in the housing strategy, like, hey, we're open to this. The
Okay.
district is open to this and supports this. And so do people in the community we've interviewed there. There's a desire for it, okay? So we can clear the road to make sure that there aren't any roadblocks in the way of anyone wanting to come forward and do that, right? So, you know, like one of the recommendations would be that council review the mandate of our development corporation. So that to make sure that mandate is open enough that the development corporation could help with that type of thing, right?
Mhm.
I think their mandate's pretty specific right now. So it might be worth council revisiting it.
Yeah, like there's,
And opening it up so that maybe they can foster and support the creation of these kind of things, like incubate them to get them going and pass them on.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if there's a desire with their board, I mean, it's
how many units is it required to be called a co-op?
question. And I think you can basically start with a house. Like if somebody wants to donate, right?
I'm thinking there's one of the last pieces of property that's zoned for housing is on Temple there. It's a 2-acre lot.
I wouldn't get too excited about pre-existing stuff. I think we know that we just need to create new land that can be used that way. If you catch my drift.
And I think we're co-op, not, I mean, we speak about the Haven and although I'm on the board, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board here. But I would say that if we're going to do a cooperative model, it would be best if it was a new build, new construction, because you wouldn't want to do a cooperative and hand over the Haven in the condition that it is to a group of people that probably wouldn't be able to handle the whole, you know, and it's not up to, it's ailing in many ways.
Oh, yeah. But then the co-op could,
To put it mildly, it's ailing in many ways.
but in the land trust side of things, the last bullet, I mean, couldn't the district have existing land or buy land, but then say, okay, this land is earmarked for a co-op? And then put out an expression of interest. Is there anybody interested in using this land to develop a co-op?
It could if you wanted to, but I mean, you've got the same thing just by putting it into a community land trust. It's a community land trust is specifically for housing. And I mean, it's up to council, obviously, what they do with their land, but I would recommend, yeah, either go into a co-op or a land trust, because then that way it remains for housing, and changes in council, like say if it's a lease of district owned land, changes in council won't affect
Right.
that housing being affordable and permanent, right? Like it, you know, with changes in council that could change. It could be like, you know what, we don't want to be landlords anymore. Like, we're just gonna, these people need to buy the land, their house, right? So, I mean, it's entirely up to council, but what I have been seeing is that there are a few other local governments that they're using this BC Community Land Trust. So they're putting their land into that and working with nonprofit societies. Yeah. Or this other model, which is this AIP, where land goes into a trust, and then people who qualify can build their own home on there, but they don't own the land, and they'd be subject to this agreement with the land trust about resale and how much they can earn in equity. It would be, there'd be a cap on equity to ensure that it remains affordable in perpetuity. And it would also mean that we could potentially, do you think the AHOP would work for that? I was thinking it would, but then with a community land trust. So if they don't own the land, but they own the house.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Bill Miller said he has models like that that have worked in the past.
Yeah, but I'm curious about a model where they, you know, it's someone who can't afford the whole down payment for, say, it's something that's 250 or 350. 350 is the max for that program. And so then portion of it is given to them by CMHC, correct? I've been looking at so many programs, they're starting to get out.
Yeah, there's,
So they help you.
First and second mortgages.
Down payment, right? And your mortgage, but then when you sell that, half that money gets paid back and it goes into a housing fund.
That's BC.
That's BC housing. Okay. So that's one way of getting money back. So the land gets put into trust. The district doesn't make money off of it necessarily. And then when they sell.
well, I'm pretty excited about all this stuff because right now we don't have anything. And we never have. This is,
Yeah.
you know, and that's why we're in the trouble we're in.
Well, and I think the other big thing, like as we talk about this, like I'm learning and I've been reading a lot, is that somehow we communicate this to the average person. So people, when they feel stuck or hit a wall, or they look, you know, go on to Remax and everything starts at $700,000, that we are now saying, okay, here are some of your options and this is how you get there. And then communicating that they don't necessarily need to come down to the district, or, you know, how do we get that out there to say, hey, if you want to start a co-op, here are some options, or hey, there may be this program that we're trying to put in and it's, you know, for $350,000. You can't be a landowner, but you can be a house owner, and how we get that out to people.
So that's part of the implementation plan.
Okay.
Which maybe I should have put in brackets, like sort of what parts of
Okay.
that was. So part of that would be a communication strategy.
Okay.
Right? And what that would look like in putting together those materials.
Okay, I guess that's.
Happy? So
Hey, anybody have any other comments? You look like you're deep in thought, Ryan.
I see, I think all of our best ideas reflected on that list, so I'm pretty happy with it. I just like what I'm hearing. And I think there's like a guaranteed thing is that bylaw 1000's gotten voted on by Airbnbs are gonna actually have rules enforced on them next year, which is more change than this town has seen for housing in a lot of years, just on its own.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate we're not quite aligned with council's bylaw 1000 adoption, but it is going back for second and third reading again.
I wouldn't make more changes to it.
Is
Just get
MRDT
it
part of that?
adopted.
Just get it adopted.
Get that short-term rental implemented.
I hear you.
Will they be paying the MRDT?
Pardon me?
Will Airbnb be paying MRDT, or it's voluntary?
Well, they do
still
already.
do.
It's at
they
2%,
have been.
but there's new.
But is it voluntary or they have to?
No, As far as the Airbnb platform goes,
If they
it's
use.
mandatory. It's if you use that platform, Airbnb does it. I don't know about any of the other platforms.
This is mandatory through our bylaw,
Okay,
right? But it was only implemented, like those businesses had to agree to it before it could be implemented.
The hotels.
Yeah, so it's not just,
It's not the hotels.
but they're, yeah, hotels have,
Hotels, yes, they're the ones who,
and it applies to short-term rentals as well.
Yeah.
it does. Okay, yeah, that's my question, short term.
so does that apply then to like HomeAway, VRBO,
Exactly.
like,
It's a business under our business licensing bylaw, right? Any commercial use, you need a business.
Right.
I think the houseboats are even binding on it. The houseboats, I think, are
nice, looking into it,
going to
considering it?
binding on it. I
Yeah.
think so.
Well, that would be good. So it's still it's still enforcing it. So VRBO, I don't believe that the platform, like some of the platforms don't automatically do it at their head office.
Right.
Where Airbnb does it, they take it right from the guest rental, goes through and it gets submitted through the province to the municipality that the Airbnb listing is in. So it's a platform. It's one of the many short-term rentals.
But our,
Easy for the,
They made it very easy to, yes.
but otherwise you'd have to include it in whatever your price is and know that you have to remit that tax.
Right.
And who follows up on that?
well, our bylaw 1000 will have regulations for short-term rentals. And one of them is you need a business license. And to get a business license, you have to pay your MRDT. So it's triggered annually every year they get a license. Am I right?
I'm not 100% sure how that's tracked because the money gets remitted to the province and then it gets sent to the district.
Then they register with the province and then, yeah. Maybe it's a bit of an honor system. If you're not,
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
Question to
audit-
Wendy,
Who would audit the,
how that works.
Yeah.
because how do you know if somebody's got a VRBO and if they're not getting a business license unless somebody actually
Man, I mean,
does a complaint?
business license? How do you track their sales? If they're just taking cash or whatever, like,
you're not going to, but we're assuming that, say, 60% going through. Maybe 80%, like, yeah, obviously, they're gonna rent to their relatives, and the guy that came back last year, they're gonna give him the cut. So he's not paying Airbnb over in the top, like, I mean, people do that all the time, right? I don't have an Airbnb.
But it's quite a bit of money. What, 130, 160,000?
Yeah, we got
60 or
we
80.
got a ton of money that came in,
Yeah.
but weren't collecting it before. And then once the profile of this upcoming edition really got
Yeah.
made in the community, there was a huge influx.
So it's a sizable chunk.
It is.
Yeah, and I know I manage 3 Airbnbs for 3 different owners. And so, and they're all through Airbnb.
Yeah.
So it's the platform. So I can see on each rental what goes to the MRDT tax and what percentage Airbnb takes. And, I do a report up for each of my clients, but that's something that I do, like as a personally owned Airbnb, you might be lenient to say, oh, I'll rent it to you this year under the table. I think I agree with you. There are lots of people that do that, but because I manage I won't even acknowledge that request. It's like, I'm sorry, I manage this property for somebody else and this is the way it is. And if you want to rent it, feel free to book it.
Yeah.
Because it's run as a business, but. All right, are we good then? Anything else? I'll recommend that the housing committee meeting for November the 3rd, 2022 be adjourned at the time being 1:35. Short and sweet.
Quick one. And this might be the last meeting of the existing committee.
Well, yes, it is the last meeting of